This is the Troutbitten Podcast.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Troutbitten.
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 Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout. Wild trout. This is Troutbitten.
This is the Troutbitten Podcast, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swentowski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of Troutbitten.com. All right, friends, we're back at it. After the season 11 intermission with Story Read last week, the Troutbitten crew is here with me for episode 8, and this one is all about hooksets. That's right, hooksets. So I always tell people, if we're talking about hooksets, that's a good thing, because it usually means we've refined the presentation enough to fool some trout. That's the hardest part, of course, and that's why most of us enjoy the challenge of trout fishing. They're not an easy fish to fool, especially the wild ones. And while setting the hook is a simpler skill to learn than all of the casting mechanics and intricacies it takes to present a fly, the concept of hooksets in fly fishing can be a bit complicated, because not all hooksets are the same. If anyone tells you always do something while fishing, don't believe them. Should we set upward with the rod tip? Sometimes. Set as fast as you can? Yeah, in some situations. Just lift the rod tip gently to tighten up? Okay, once in a while. Always strip set on a streamer? No thanks. There are many different ways to set the hook while fly fishing for trout, because there are many different ways to fish for those trout. One size does not fit all. So we adapt our hook sets to suit the situation. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We'll cover what is meant by a trout set. We'll talk about setting distance, setting speed, setting direction, whether we should pause before a hook set, and many other broad and finer points about setting the hook. This will be an important one for all of us, because every angler benefits from thinking things through. We spend an awful lot of time with our fly in the water trying to get a fish to eat. So when it does, being prepared with a plan for the hook set gets us to the fight. And if we're lucky, we put a fish in the net. Hey now. So let me introduce my best fishing friends. Here is the Troutbitten crew. Austin Dando is in a really important business meeting, so he's not here. Hey, here's Bill Dell. Bill Dell from Western PA. What you doing, bud?
Not much. Providing technical support to other members of the podcasting crew.
Hey now.
We got Matt Grobe all the way out in Montana, video and audio. Good job.
I suck at technology.
Yeah, there's Matt Grobe. Well, you don't suck at technology. You were also distracted by Madison. How old is she?
She's 4.
Oh, 4 now.
Almost. Her birthday's the start of official salmon fly season.
Okay, good. Is that the biggest bug you have out there?
Yeah.
Really?
Without question.
How big is it?
Well, the males and females are different lengths, but I've seen them at least 3.5 inches long.
What's that, like a 1 or a 2?
2. I usually tie my chubby on a size 2.
2, like 2X long too, probably.
Yeah, and you can hang a house off it. It's pretty fun.
Deli's showing us a picture. Get that in focus, bud. Come on, do better.
I ran into some salmon flies this weekend fishing.
No, you didn't.
I did so.
Back in Western PA? Salmon flies.
No, in Central.
They're
a little bit different.
What the hell is that?
That looks like a Helgramite.
No, it's a salmon.
Dr. Trevor Smith says it's a Helgramite.
Salmon fly.
Tell us more.
Helgramite.
I can't
is way
see it very
bigger.
well.
I know.
If it was, I'll tell you what, there was on one of our favorite Central PA limestoners, I would always see an incredible egg-laying flight from those stone flies this time of year down on the
right on. I don't know if we can call it a salmon fly.
braids.
Why are we calling it a salmon fly, Deli?
No, there's the other one.
It shouldn't be a salmon. It's not
the Yellowstone. Yeah.
Yellowstone fly. It could be. Yeah.
I'm terrible.
So we did sort of half-ass introduce every person here tonight, right? Josh is
You did not introduce me.
I kind of said Dr. Trevor Smith was saying something about.
Did you?
Stone fly. Okay, bud. How was your shooting event in Western PA this
It was
past
great.
weekend? Tell us.
Yeah, it was great. Josh and I went down to TAC, Total Archery Challenge, with a couple other guys, and shot a number of different 3D archery courses down there. It's a cool event. Yeah, it's kind of like a mecca for archery outdoorsmen, kind of backwoods hunters. Yeah, it's a cool event. A lot of neat people. You definitely feel like you're walking around a sea of people that look and talk and dress a lot like you.
The same way.
It's a good exercise in humility in that respect, but it was good. It's, hard courses up through the mountains, a lot of difficult shots. Most of the courses that we shots ranged from about 60 to 110 yards.
That's a lot.
So it's a
110.
lot of distance compared to a typical, and you'll have a mule deer sitting in the shadows, or like a javelina target in a shadow. You're standing in bright sunlight. You can barely see the thing. You got a cross breeze. You're shooting 85 yards down a hill.
Holy cow.
And if you miss, you break an arrow, because it's just everything is rocky. So the stakes are high as far as missing targets, and an arrow costs you $5 to $15 depending on what you're shooting.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. There's nothing quite like it. It really puts your archery skills to the test in a way that you really can't put them to the test in any other setting. So once you've prepared for and shot and been able to do okay there, you feel like you can kind of do just about anything you need to.
I have two questions for you.
Yeah.
Are you really shooting 85 or 110, 20 yards in an actual hunting scenario?
More out west than here in PA. Here in PA, if you get a shot beyond 30, 35 yards, it's kind of rare. Yeah, kind of rare. And not only is it rare, but it's also probably not very well advised to shoot in the woods that far, just because your chances of hitting a little sapling or a branch or something like that are pretty high. But out west, it is not uncommon for antelope, mule deer, elk, for those guys to be shooting 50 to 100 yards if they can.
No kidding. Just because it's clear.
It's clear, and your ability to get that close to the animal is just so much more difficult, because a lot of times you don't have the cover of the woods. So you're doing stalks, and you've got to be able to shoot that far.
I love it.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting for sure. Josh, I'll brag on him for just a second. He made a 111-yard shot into a silver dollar sized spot.
I know.
To win a chance at winning a truck. So
F-150.
it's kind of a ridiculous shot.
Oh,
yeah. It's kind of crazy.
I love it. So you said how many people were there?
Oh man. The cumulative number of unique people that are there throughout the weekend, I think, is between 20 and 30,000. So
that shows you right there how much bigger hunting is than fishing, and especially than fly fishing, and especially than fly fishing for trout in rivers.
Yes, right.
Which is what we do. Mostly wild trout.
Yep. There's a lot of money in it for sure. And archery has really grown as a sport.
And you're the leader.
Yeah.
Mostly people were there to see you, huh?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of... I wore my Troutbitten hat.
Oh, did you?
So, yeah,
I like
tried to spread the word.
All right. Thanks, guys. I have an announcement. Just a quick announcement here, and then a quick question before we get to our topic on Hooksets. So the new Trail Troutbitten beer pours on June 29th. And we're all pretty excited about that. Got if you look over on Instagram, I'm sure you'll see a couple promos for the beer, which show the label, and there's some neat stuff. Something we've been working on for a couple of years. That's a Saturday, June 29th. The brewery opens at noon, and we'll have a few drawings and giveaways, but no tickets are necessary. Just come and share a beer with us. We'll talk a little bit about fishing, or maybe a lot about fishing. And let's have a celebration over at New Trail. Now, they're open late, and we may need a ride home.
How many do you think you can drink? Seriously.
Well,
and still function?
We're not trying to have a competition, Matt.
Do you think you could do 6 to 8?
Over how many hours?
If it starts at noon.
How many ounces? 12 ounces?
You're drinking 1 an hour.
16 ounces. Ooh.
Yeah, 16.
No, not a pound an hour. But
no? Okay.
Right? We were going to fly Matt
best
in,
beer event
so everybody could see Matt, the infamous Matt Grobe. But nope, he's got work to do. It's a bad weekend for him.
Man, it's a bad week. It's the only weekend.
Not your fault.
It's rough. But I'll be jealous. I'm really pumped for this event. If I went in, I'd go sideways and get into trouble.
You wouldn't be driving home.
No.
We're going to make Austin the designated driver.
Is he responsible?
Nah. All right, let's make Josh the designated driver.
Okay. Someone's got to do it. Sloop certainly wouldn't be that.
No, he'd be
Sloop would be sleeping at noon. Or
he'd be the first one to tap out. He's like, I'm done, guys. 1:30. Hey, I'm done. Tapping out.
Yeah. He actually might be around for that. He's flying back.
No kidding.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, everybody, Sloop might be there. June 29th, New Trail beer. We're calling the beer Troutbitten. We were going to call it Hey Now, but we figured we would, many of you out there would already understand it. But this thing's going to be in like stores, where you can buy cases. And people are going to go, what? Hey Now. What the hell's that? Troutbitten hazy IPA.
You should have put for the next one. You should put the recipe for the Troutbitten Superfly on like individual cases to see if people would buy. How many cases will someone buy to patch it together?
Right, like a prize. Like you open up the case and there's
like a pizza box
the recipe.
sometimes. Like I order this one pizza and they give me the letters, and if you spell out pizza, you get a free pizza.
That's good. Did you say Voltron?
Voltron.
Yeah, like you can get the different pieces and combine them into Voltron.
Ooh, right? We like these ideas.
I like it.
All right, quick goofing around. We have a podcast to do. The landscape is changing for trout anglers. No doubt you've already noticed another truck at your favorite access point and seen more anglers on the water. For those looking for new challenges and fishing opportunities, Trout Routes has the data to help you avoid the crowds and explore new public water. Trout Routes has mapped more than 50,000 trout streams across the country with curated, detailed maps of public land and access points. Trout Routes has developed integrated and interactive data, putting the tools in your hands to research new water and help you navigate in the wild to know exactly where you stand in the current. It's still up to you to find those deep pools and undercuts, but Trout Routes helps you get on the water, connecting you with resources like fly shops and stream gauges for trout water across the country. Download Trout Routes in the App Store today. Then use the code Troutbitten for 20% off your membership at maps.troutroutes.com. For over a decade, Smith Creek has designed and built outstanding gear for the serious angler. Smith Creek's Rod Rack is the perfect solution to store up to 7 pre-rigged fly rods safely inside your vehicle. Each kit comes with 2 heavy-duty suction cups and 3 mounting methods. If your vehicle has bolt holes in the rear headliner, Smith Creek now offers free M6 eye bolts with your proof of purchase. The Smith Creek Rod Rack has been my choice for rod storage for the last 5 years because I prefer to keep my rods in the vehicle, rigged up and ready to go, without the need for a rod vault on the top of the vehicle. All Smith Creek gear is backed by outstanding customer service, no matter where or when you bought it. To stay up to date on their latest specials, follow them on Instagram at Smith Creek NZ. Quality you can depend on from a brand you can trust. Smith Creek. Let's do a question. This one's important. One of our themes this spring has been about stocking and how it affects wild trout populations. I've written articles. I've asked for emails and comments to our Fish Commission supporting some of their efforts to cease stocking on wild trout streams. That's good. And our last full podcast was about the troubles with club fishing, namely about how things get really messy when clubs stock over wild fish. Stop stocking over wild trout, please. That's been our overall message in all of this. And inevitably, anytime we talk about wild trout, we get comments and questions about native trout. So we're going to feature one of these questions because these have come in a lot lately, and I think it's worth a good answer from us. Real quick, a native trout is indigenous to the region. It was there from the beginning. In our area, only the brook trout is native. The browns here were introduced in the late 1800s, and honestly, we're glad they're here. We're really glad they're here. Yes, they are wild. Any trout that is born in the river is wild. That's the simple definition. Now, I get it. That's reductionist. But any trout that's born in the river is wild. Okay. Dr. Trevor Smith, because you like reading, will you present this question for the discussion, please?
I'm so pleased you asked me.
I've been using the word please a lot this evening.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, this question is from Andy K.
Yep.
By way of email. Hi, Dominic and the Troutbitten crew. I've read your articles.
No, wait. You didn't say. It was just to me.
Hey, Dr. Wool. I have read your articles for years and respect you so much more than Dominic.
Just read the words.
All right. Hi, Dominic. I've read your articles for years and respect what you have to say.
Yeah.
Oh, did you write this?
No. Andy Kraft, that's his last name.
There you go. I've passed several of your articles on to people, particularly those that deal with wild trout versus stock trout. In the past couple of years, I've seen quite an increase of anglers who blame the brown trout solely for the decline of the native brook trout in Pennsylvania. I have tried to explain that browns can handle warmer water than brook trout, and that brook trout have suffered from loss of habitat. There's no doubt browns are more dominant and adaptable today. I've even seen some guys propose using chemicals to kill the browns. One guy has even likened browns to cockroaches.
Oh.
I was wondering what your take is on that. Sincerely, Andy.
Hey now.
Jeez.
So I have my own thoughts. What do you guys think? This is a very common question. I mean it. That's why we're addressing it. I've probably gotten a dozen questions in the last couple of weeks because of all the things that we've talked about lately.
I guess
Billy Dell has something.
The chemicals, can they design a chemical that will specifically just kill a brown trout?
Isn't that rotanin?
Yeah, it happens all the time out here.
Right on, Matt.
So it will only kill the brown trout? It will not kill a brook trout?
No, it would kill all fish species, but what would likely happen is they'd
Sounds
shock
great.
it. Yeah.
Sounds great.
They'd shock it, keep as many brook trout as they can, and then kill off. That's what they did on the Soda Butte Creek not long ago. They killed off all the brook trout and then repopulated it with cutthroat trout. So
I know they tried to do this on a stream in near central PA. And so they drained it down and they took they shocked it and they took all the browns out of it they could. I fished it like a year later and I was still catching brown trout.
All browns. Yeah.
I still caught brook trout too, but it's really hard to eradicate that population. Like you're saying, they're like cockroaches. In a sense, they kind of are.
That's fair. You know, they're like cockroaches in the way that they're really well adapted to this situation. I say that we are very thankful for our brown trout. Now, I'm talking about right here. One of the hard things about talking about fishing in any form, whether you're talking about tactics or rivers or what to expect when you go to the stream. It's so hard to talk about fishing because, once again, your frame of reference is so different. And we're talking about our region right here. Don't try to get rid of the brown trout. They're perfectly adapted. I mean perfectly adapted for this right here. You try reintroducing the brook trout, it won't work. We have sewage treatment plants. We have agricultural runoff. We have other chemicals, we have warm water in a lot of cases. Even though we have spring water here, a lot of it gets too warm. Those influences, those things that have changed the rivers from what they were before the brown trout were introduced, everything's just different. You can't bring it back to what it was. So we're thankful for that brown trout that we have. Now, for me, in some places where you could reintroduce or let's say really emphasize that native wild brook trout population, I'm okay with that too. But it would be absolutely ridiculous to try to reintroduce it right here. And in so many areas, like the Delaware River, oh my gosh, that would be asinine. It makes no sense to try to eradicate something that is doing so well, and that the brook trout cannot survive there, not in large numbers, if at all.
It would require ignoring the ecology of and how it's changed in our local
how things have changed
streams, right? And I just think that's like so many things that we answer and talk about. It requires the understanding of the nuance in order to answer it and have a good perspective. And I think it doesn't apply to every single river in the country. And there, like we're acknowledging, there are rivers where brook trout may be able to live in a sustainable fashion. And it's a question that can be explored.
There's several streams that I can catch kind of 50-50, where it's half brookies, half browns. And so I do think they can kind of cohabitate together. I don't think it's a one or the other thing. There's that diversity in species can be fun because you don't know what you're going to catch. What I don't like is some of the stalking that goes on over some of the brook trout. So you might have a B or like a class B or a class C brook trout fishery that maybe those brook trout are only getting 5 or 6 inches at that point. Yeah. But then they dump a few thousand stock rainbows in it from, 10 inches to, 20 inches. And so those brook trout are getting eaten by the stock trout.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys, I think, answered that really well all around. I would even chime in, Bill, to like, if you had that situation in the East, right, with the 50-50, it shows that those brook trout have the ability to reproduce. So I would think and evaluate that stream, because the reality is the percentage that we're left with, right, of streams like that has just decreased. Dom, you mentioned from the 1850s to today, if you looked at a map, you're at a very small amount. So for me, you preserve that. If you identify that, you get ahead of that, you preserve it, you build in a fish barrier if you need to. They have them all the time out here, where they have pure strain fish with no invasion of the non-native species. And I think that's cool. But you said it best, Don. That's small. I mean, those are far and few between in that area. And quite frankly, all over the place, even out here with the cutthroats, right? I mean, I get why they do that. I mean, it's pretty unique because we talk about it. You can catch brown trout anywhere in the world.
Just about. Yep.
You can only catch a native brook trout, right? Yeah. That's pretty cool because it's native to that area. Or a cutty. There's two fish native to our country. To me, when it makes sense, I'm okay trying to reintroduce that that sport anyway of catching the native fish.
I really am too. I'm okay with it. I'm more than okay with it. I'm for it. But I think a lot of people are well-intentioned but misinformed when they think that, like, oh, hey, in Central PA, those brown trout are just pushing those brook trout out. Yeah. That's not the case.
No.
The brook trout cannot survive here.
Sure.
And in not just here, but in many, many places across the country. But we're talking about in the East, and we're talking about specifically in PA, and we know we know this region, and we know many places just relatively outside of this region. They can't survive. Where they can get that foothold. Bill, if you're talking about it like a 50-50 split, okay, those brook trout can survive. And are those brown trout pushing them out? Yup. Like, we all acknowledge that. The brown trout are a more dominant species. They're going to be more, I'm going to say powerful in a way, right? They're going to be more dominant, and they're going to exert that influence. They're going to keep pushing those brookies further and further upstream.
Yeah.
They're going to get what they want, right? So do you really want to try to eradicate the brown trout in that case? I don't, but I'm not totally opposed to trying to preserve, like you say, Matt, where those brook trout, in our case, the brook trout, can survive. Those are very, very limited places. So cool.
It almost warrants, Dom, like a whole podcast chat on. We talk about wild trout all the time, but the experience to chase native trout, what it's different, right? We all acknowledge that it's different. Yeah. It's all different. It's maybe, let's be honest, those native fish very rarely get as big as some of these non-native fish, and just the setting, the environment, the process in chasing them is often different than just chasing the wild fish. We like fish of all different kinds, right? But it is unique to chase the native trout. So that'd be a cool topic someday.
Right on. I'd like to have a couple guests on that I can think of.
Yeah.
For that topic, because none of us are experts in that field. But I've talked to fisheries biologists. I've talked to fish commission people. I've talked to, even members of the Native Trout Coalition. And all of them that I've talked to anyway have acknowledged what I said. Like, honestly, you're not going to eradicate the brown trout in our region and reintroduce the brook trout, it can't survive there. Could some? Absolutely. If you get the brown trout completely out of the way, could some survive there? Sure. But they would be struggling to hang on because, unfortunately, the things that humans have done to this area. But we're lucky that we have that brown trout.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the areas that it does have some feasibility is those smaller mountain streams.
Right on.
Well, look at the characteristics of those streams, right? They all have something pretty similar in common, right?
Yeah.
Lack of development.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
They've
Right.
cold,
There's no sewage
cold
treatment
water.
plants.
Right.
Cold, clean.
No, I think it's helpful for people to even just hear that the difference in terminology between a wild and a native fish.
Yeah.
And I think if once you can name those two different things and understand them too, you can begin to have a little bit better concept of the roles they play here.
Good point. And to us, it's just, it's like the ABCs, right? Were you ready to move on from that?
Yeah, it's a good question, though. That was fun.
It is. And I'm with you, Matt. That deserves a big podcast of its own. It is a big topic. And every time I talk about preserving, enhancing, protecting wild trout, I get comments. What about native trout? That's what we care about most. Well, sure we do. And then it's not always possible to have those native trout around. All right, guys, let's move into our conversation on hook sets. So for me, I think setting the hook is the most exciting part of the day on the water. Think about that. That moment when a fish eats, that tiny slice of time, just that little moment, is like a shot of adrenaline for me every time. Getting great drifts and working on all of that is almost cerebral. And over the years, I've learned to calm myself down during a big fish fight so I make better decisions, right? So I don't get crazy and do the wrong things. So what's left after kind of calming myself down while I'm fishing and then while the fish is hooked, what's left is that quick spark right at the moment that you stick a fish. That moment holds the most excitement for me. Do you guys see it that way?
There is something special about that moment, I think. I think it even I would expand it beyond just the hook set, but then that immediate second or two following it where you kind of, you get a sense of what you've hooked and there's just some excitement in the unknown.
That's a nice point. You set the hook, you don't know for the split second if it's whatever, is 6 inches or 26 inches, right?
Yeah.
And then in the first two or 3 seconds,
Yep.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Doc stole my answer.
I saw you about to say it, Bill.
It is though, right? It's all the other stuff we do. Trevor, you and I have talked about, especially in night fishing, we've learned to kind of control our emotions and our anxiety and our adrenaline in a way. We've learned to just kind of tamp it down because bad things happen when that kind of stuff takes over. And yet for me, in that split second and maybe 1 second after or two, every hook set, I get that little surge of adrenaline. For me, that's the most exciting parts of the day.
Absolutely.
It's a spark for sure, but I oftentimes, it's a spark and adrenaline rush when you hook the fish. But I find often that it's mysterious, right? Because there's so many times you set the hook on odd, was it the bottom? Was it the biggest fish in my life?
That's true.
Did I foul hook a fish? There's question along with that adrenaline that happens, especially when the fish are on, right? For me, anyway, it does a little bit of both.
You get to a good point there, Matt. You're talking about, sometimes you set the hook and it's the bottom. Well, that's if you're fishing underneath. You only ever really set the hook on top if you see a fish eat your fly, right? I guess once in a while you lose track of the dry fly and you set it anyway.
What about
mostly,
bat? I've set the hook on bats before.
Have you ever caught a bat?
I have.
Oh, no. You have a bat story.
And snakes.
Oh, my God. Aiden and Aiden's my youngest son. Aiden, Joey, and I were fishing, and he foul hooked a snake yesterday. Yep.
It's creepy.
I never hooked a snake, and he released it.
Yep.
Was it obviously it was like a black snake,
it was
water
like a
snake?
Brown water snake.
We've hooked a rattler before.
Baby one too. Oh my gosh, you have?
On our favorite limestoner there. Yeah. My brother did. We'd cut the line.
Yeah, I probably would too.
You ever catch a mud puppy?
No, that's the ugliest creature in the world.
Yeah. I'll never forget. I was about 8 years old. My brother and I hooked something. We were fishing worms under a bridge on the Allegheny, and this mud puppy comes running out of the water, and we just about died. We cut the line and ran home.
You know, right?
Like, what creature of hell is this?
Right. Nothing that ugly should exist. No. Is that a hellbender?
Yeah.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe
that's what I thought it was.
So you were thinking the same thing? I saw synonymous. Bill looking it up. Yeah.
I was like, I think that's a hellbender.
Yeah. So I think they're different.
There are different
types of hook sets, right? And that's what we're here to talk about, really. Underneath, different things are going to happen. You're going to set the hook. I've told people, you're going to set the hook 50 times, and then the 51st time is going to be a fish.
Sure.
We've talked about, should you set on everything? Well, no. But, set on anything unexpected. There's different ways to look at it. Well, yeah, there's not just one type of hook set. So it's going to be neat to kind of dig into. I would say, like, most hook sets don't hook a fish, though, right? Whether it's up top or underneath or just kind of even in the surface. I mean, most times we set the hook. If you average them all out, and I'm talking underneath too, right? If you average them all out, most hook sets don't really result in a fish at the end of the line.
Yeah, especially with nymphing, I would say.
Yeah,
right.
And there's not a lot you can do about that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
No, but that's the effective way to do it. Like if you're doing it right, then you've come to that conclusion. And I think that's the hardest thing for some folks to learn, especially beginner anglers, is the frequency of hook sets. We can talk about types, but frequency too. You gotta hook set on lots of different variables there, and you play it conservative. When in doubt, personally, I like to set the hook nymphing.
I know, right?
With the tight line setup.
Sure.
So maybe we should really start out with this. Hook sets for each style of fly.
Yeah.
You guys want to walk through it?
Yeah.
Let's start with dry flies. The heart of fly fishing. Dry fly hook sets. What's characteristic of those hook sets? Oak and Oscar is an American watch company that does things the right way, not the easy way, crafting mechanical timepieces that combine Swiss precision with American know-how. Oak and Oscar was founded in 2015, named after the owner's love of bourbon and his dog, Oscar. Their watches are built to withstand even the most adventurous fly angler. Our very own Austin Dando has been putting his Olmsted to the test since last year. Oak and Oscar is a watch company that loves fly fishing. Visit their website at oakandoscar.com/troutbitten. Mark your time on the water with Oak and Oscar.
Nymphing, I think, as soon as you detect a strike, you want to set.
Okay.
Dries, when you see the eat, you don't want to set right away. The more I dry fly fish, the more I think that I set too early.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
And that I need to wait longer.
Agree.
I guess maybe I'm stuck in that nymphing phase where I'm like, oh, eat, set right away, like through nymphing. But with dry flies, it's eat, God save the queen, then set.
Right.
Sometimes. And I think it's even later, depending on the fly, the fish, the angle, everything.
I would even comment that it depends on the water too.
Yeah.
Because I don't like say that. I don't like God Save the Queen on fast water.
In fast riffles, runs.
Yep. So for me, depending on the water type, will dictate the type of hook set that I'm in. And lately, just by the waters I fish, very quick currents, I'm striking pretty quick. When I say I'm striking pretty quick, I'm pulling down on that slack, if I have it, off the index finger. And I'm going up or I'm going sideways to quicken the tension as fast as I can.
I like that.
But if I'm in slow water, I'm going with Deli's approach.
Right, Matt.
To me, it's like the other thing that affects this a lot is just the distance I am from the fly and the time it takes me to really react to what I'm seeing. Because when I'm tight line nymphing, I'm typically 15, 20 feet of line at most out. And so when I'm drifting, and I may only have 2 to 5 feet of that underwater, when I see the line stop, the time it takes for me to check set or set is probably shortest of all of the different types of set just based on my reaction time, because I'm just watching for that to stop. I'm very close to the fly. I don't have to pull slack out of the line because I'm already managing the slack. And so as soon as I tip downstream, I'm setting the hook. And yet when I'm dry fly fishing, a lot of times I've got a lot of curves in the line. There's a lot of line on the water. I might be 25, 30 feet from the fly. And so when I see that eat, I do feel like I'm reacting pretty quickly, but it takes, a period of time for me to gather the slack, pull it tight, react to what I'm seeing visually, and then provide the hook set. So even to me, I guess I don't even feel like I don't feel like I have to consciously wait for much of dry fly fishing. I don't feel like I'm consciously trying to wait. I just feel like the process takes longer, and that sort of matches up with the fact that I want it to take longer too.
I love it. So everything is relative and nuanced.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder why we ever try to talk about fishing at all. We could have probably a full season on hook sets. It really is. It's very nuanced. Sure. What you're saying, I totally get that. You're saying usually when you fish a dry fly, you got a lot of slack out there. Well, a good bit of slack out there. You're not tight.
More than if you're tight lining. Yeah.
Right. So you need to pick up some slack. So if that fish eats, even in maybe slower water, you still know you have, 6 feet of slack, maybe.
Absolutely.
Of S-curves, 4 to 5 to 6 feet of slack to pick up and tighten up. And there you go. And that's going to take a split second or a half second. And so maybe saying God save the Queen is going to take too long. For everybody listening, if you don't know, it's a UK thing to say, God save the Queen, and then you set your hook. And that's great. I think, like you're saying, Matt, in slow water, in flat water, in, slow walking pace water, that makes sense to me. I try to match the pace of the fish. If the fish eats fast, boom, I set as fast as I can.
That's good. I like that.
Okay, and so if the fish eats slow, if you're in flat water, and you see him coming up and he's eating spinners and he just goes, I'm just going to suck that in, and then it goes down. Well, then I'm going to try to be very disciplined and go, give him a second, God save the Queen. And now I set, and then I do pull out. Maybe I did have 6 feet of slack, but that's okay. I try to match his speed. And that seems to work for me. On a dry fly set, we're talking about dry fly sets. In slower water, I do feel like they will just come and come on, you guys have seen this, right? Where they'll just drift back with your fly and look at it and look at it and look at it. And then if you're lucky, they'll eat it. But in the fast water, they got to make faster decisions. So they're going, whoop, I'll eat that.
Sure.
And they're eating and going right back down and trying to get out of the fastest stuff. Deli?
Can we agree that as far as setting the hook when it comes to dry fly, I think is the most difficult to determine your timing?
I agree with you completely. Yes.
Like, I think it's, and I have problems. This is probably, I don't know. I go through this phase at times where, like, if my timing is off, right? If I miss like 2 or 3 fish in a row, then I get in my head, then I wait too long, then I set too early, and I'm trying to find like that happy median of kind of somewhere in between the two.
Yeah.
And so it can get the most frustrating.
Dom, that's one of the best descriptions or pieces of advice I've heard as far as kind of immersing yourself in what you need to do to set the hook. I really like that because it essentially then translates into what bugs are hatching, right?
Sure.
You're
what water you're in.
Exactly. So if you follow that advice, which is incredibly sound, I think you'll have more of a probability of doing the appropriate hook set. Because when I was listening to you chat, you're going to see fish eat caddisflies way different and react to that. Or, if it's late July and you're starting to hear these fish explode under bushes, they're probably eating terrestrials. Right. And so when you go to approach those fish, I'm going to then in my mind say, okay, I need to be ready for this. This thing's coming out of the water to eat this.
Yeah. And we can be ready for it. Let's say tomorrow I go to the flattest and slowest piece of water on my favorite river. And I'm ready for that caddis rise a fish rising to a caddis, which is going to be real quick and bam, They're trying to get it before it emerges. And then what I really get is like a terrestrial rise. Maybe they think my CDC and elk is a terrestrial, and they're going, I'm just going to easily sip that. I just try to match it. And so we kind of need to be ready for everything. You have your expectations on a dry fly. And then like you said, Trevor, I think it's really important to know, it is really important to know how much slack you have out there that you're going to have to pick up. There's a lot of intuitive things that happen. And yes, the best fly anglers are going to be in tune with all of that. You're going to know how long it's going to take you to tighten up. That's what Hookset is, right? It's tightening up. And we're not trying to go a lot more than that. We're not sitting on a muskie with a big bony mouth, right? It's a trout. And even the biggest trout have some softness in their mouth. And we're just trying to tighten up and then a little bit further to set the hook.
So dry fly fishing, the majority of the time you're using fly line, whether it's a weight forward,
right on.
You know, that fly line generates more line speed than mono. And so like the velocity of my hook set is always much less with fly line because the little movement with the rod will generate a lot of line speed.
That's such a good point. Such a good point.
If you're dry fly fishing, you're not trying to, like you said, you're not trying to set the hook on a muskie. It's just kind of, it is the raise of a rod, and it depends on your flies, right? If you're fishing a size 18 blueing olive, it literally all it can be is just the raise of the rod tip is going to embed that fly in a fish. Where maybe if you're fishing stonefly out west, you might have to set a little bit harder, but you can set a little bit harder because you have a stronger tippet that's attached to that fly, and so you can set a little bit harder. So think about like what the velocity you need to set to and the tippet strength that you have to be able to penetrate the fish's mouth.
Like knowing your tippet, knowing how much slack you have out, and knowing the I suppose gauging the trout's speed of take, the trout's aggressiveness really of the take, trying to match it.
Do you notice there is a difference between brook trout takes on top and brown trout eats on top?
You mean native versus non-native, Matt?
Yeah. You can go if you will.
Okay. I'm just trying to stick with the species.
If you will.
I think the native species will eat a little bit slower.
Really?
It's like that out here for sure.
Brook trout eat slower, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
No kidding. Huh. I would have thought
maybe it takes them longer to eat it.
I fish a stream that has a lot of brookies in it and cutthroats, and I would say without question, they're the laziest eaters.
Brookies
and cutthroats are like, they are the most lethargic, slow dry fly eaters, as opposed to a brown and a rainbow who eats way more aggressive, from my experience.
I'm stunned by that, honestly. I feel like the brook trout is the most aggressive eater.
So they may aggressively eat it, but I think it takes them longer to maybe
digest it
or get it in their mouth. Still, like
we're trying to let them swallow it, guys. That's what we're doing.
That's what I would say. I would say that cutthroat, it's easier to catch them on dry flies, but they're
a bunch of bait guys, Western PA bait guys.
Very slow and lethargic. Anyway, good stuff.
I like that. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time there on dry flies. What about nymphs? How's that different than dry fly hook sets?
Well, I think for one, you can't see it, right? So that's
fair.
Yeah.
That might be the most important thing. Yeah. Now you're guessing. Yeah.
So now you're guessing. So by just the reality of the situation is you're setting the hook more often because you can't register the take. You're not 100% confident all the time, right?
Right on.
So you're setting the hook way more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is where the concept of check set kind of comes in, in terms of its utility. And
check to see if it's a fish.
Yeah, exactly. Set. If you can begin to master the check set so that you don't disrupt your entire drift on each hook set, you certainly are going to be a little bit more efficient angler, especially tight line angler.
Good call.
Yeah, because I think as soon as you set the hook, you're pulling your nymph out of drift, up into a higher point in the water column. It has to sink again. You put a lot of tippet probably in the water as you're letting it sink again. It's just an uncontrolled descent versus the tuck cast where you enter the water to begin with. So a hook set has the potential to disrupt your entire drift. And if you continue to do that and don't master these little like very quick, minute check sets, I don't know. I just think it's like, as I watch people fish, I certainly see a lot of disrupted drifts very early in the drift as that fly sinks and hits a rock, and they just pull the whole thing out of the water again and again and again and again and again.
So Trevor, can I ask how far, if we're talking about a check set, I've written articles on this. You and I talk about this a lot. How far does your fly move on a check set? Check to see if a trout is there set.
An inch or two?
Yeah, ideally an inch.
Yeah, right. It's your rod tip, like the whole mechanism might move a little bit more than that, but you have to remember your rod tip is flexing.
Yeah.
Your tippet's stretching. Like there's a lot of play on that end of the system, but what it results in to the fly should be just a really short motion.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah,
Would
please.
you say that by tying your own flies specific for the watershed you're in, you can eliminate some of the check set that goes on when you're really familiar with the water?
Wow. Really? No, I don't understand. Go ahead.
No?
I like this.
The sense of like you're building these flies to where it's like your stream so well at a certain CFS that you can essentially, you're not buying store-bought flies that essentially the sink rate is universal, right? There's bins of flies for multiple streams, but when you get to know your stream, you can really tune in to the majority of those pulls and runs you're fishing with a tight line rig, to where you're in that sweet spot the majority of the time where there's not as much variation to where I guess it gives you more information as to eliminate the amount of check sets.
Wow. I like that. I mean, that's being really in tune with your river. Deli, you have something.
Yeah, so I fished like the last 4 days, and so before I left, I tied flies because the rivers have been lower. And so, like to your point, Matt, I tied them with smaller beads, and I tied smaller flies that were weighted a lot less because I didn't want to drag something across the bottom.
That's cool.
Nice. Yeah.
I know we're not talking about hook sets, but it helps your hook set. That approach, that tactic, it's pretty interesting when you take the game that far.
It is, right.
I guess maybe I'm the only one here, but I don't use check sets that often.
I know you don't. We've talked about that.
I run it through either where I don't want it to touch. Like right now, the fish are active and they're up in the water column eating.
Used to seeing bugs emerging.
So I don't want it dragging across the bottom. If I'm bumping something, I want it to be a fish. And even in like fast, skinny stuff. And it's, I guess sometimes I'll fish shorter distances. So I guess this leads into like every drift I put through with a nymph, for the most part, I'm setting the hook at the end of it because that's my cast. That's my back cast.
Glad you brought that up.
Like the skinny, let's say like today I found fish in let's say 6 or 8 inches of water really fast.
Yeah.
And so I was fishing maybe a 3 or 4 foot drift because that's all it was.
Yeah.
Just a little bitty pocket. And so it was, set. And you're basically just, I don't know, it's like rapid fire. Like you're hitting that pocket, boom, boom, boom. It's okay. You got 10 drifts. Okay. The next one. Okay. Now the next one.
What's your speed? What's your speed of the hook set like? Is it universal? Just quick?
You right into the back cast?
Yeah. I guess that's for better or worse. I probably set harder than I need to. I've gotten better over the years.
You do.
But I set, like I'm putting that like that.
I got him.
Like that hook's going through that fish's face, whether they like it or not.
Now, do you do it? Are you consistent with the angle of the rod when you're in that mode?
Yeah. I guess for me, I almost always set not quite parallel to the water, but I never set up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I don't understand anybody setting any angle different than what the back cast is going to be. For me, when I'm fishing, as soon as that fly goes into the water, I'm talking about a dry fly, a nymph, a streamer, or a wet. as soon as my fly hits the water, I'm ready for the hook set. And that hook set is exactly the same angle as what my back cast is going to be. I mean it. That fly could drift 30 feet downstream of me, and then I'm still going to set basically downstream as much as possible, but sideways. And I'm setting to where my back cast is going to be. I don't understand why this is so complicated for people. Why are we lifting our rod up into the trees, like you're saying,
right?
Bill?
I don't like that.
Why are we lifting upstream, pulling the fly out of the trout's mouth? Why are we lifting any angle except for where the back cast is?
Sure.
Back to the nymph, though, Deli, you're talking about setting and then going, setting, and then right back into the forward cast. But for me, it's like check set, real short, and then into the back cast, and then go. And the angle, though, is always into what the back cast is going to be.
Dom, what's triggering? We have an answer. What's triggering the hook set, though? So if you're tight lining
on a nymph,
you have a suspender or you have a sighter. Yeah. Are you immediately setting the hook on movement of the sighter and bobber? Or are you guys giving it some time?
Matt, I didn't understand this until Josh and I started filming things. And Josh even asked me, he said, why do you do that every time? And what he meant was, why do I set the hook at the end of every drift? Deli, you just said that. I literally set the hook at the end of every drift. I'm not trying to snag fish. I've had people from Michigan telling me, oh, you're just trying to snag them. Again, frame of reference, because that's what they're used to seeing. No, Matt, I'm just setting the hook at the end of every drift because if I haven't set the hook already, now I'm going to. Sure. And by set the hook, I mean on a nymph drift. I'm talking about I rounded off to a 10-inch hook set. 10 inches. I'm moving the fly 10 inches. And now, seriously, hold your hands out to what actually 10 inches is. Mm-hmm. Let's not exaggerate it. It's 10 inches. And bang! And then I backcast. Yep. And so it's not actually one movement for me. I don't go straight into the backcast. I go set and then go.
Gotcha.
I'm yelling at you guys. But
no, it's good.
Right?
So it sounds like everybody fishes pretty quick on the hook set, though, when it comes to nymphing.
Yeah. By the time you know it, whether it's under an indicator or even on a tight line, by the time you know it, those fish are trying to let it go, right?
Sure. Well, I will say one thing, though, with it depends on some setup stuff, too. And Bill, sorry to cut you off, but if I have my standard tag and anchor, I think I'm very quick to set, but I would even say, there's certain times in the winter months where I may give a little bit more flex on that movement of the sighter and or the bobber, just because I feel like the eats are a little bit more lethargic. So my hook set's delayed a little bit more in the winter, just because they're eating midges. They're at the bottom of the deepest, darkest holes typically. At least this is something I experience. And then if I'm tractor trailer fishing, which is, putting an egg off a big stone fly, or you've written about it, in much detail on the website. I find I try to set the hook the quickest when I'm fishing that setup because of the delayed reaction on that
You're
tag.
out of touch a little bit. Yeah. You want to know what your rig is. Yeah. And if you know that you've set up your rig so that, you're 12 inches really out of touch, by the time you know it, you better set as quick as you can.
Right.
Yeah. Nymphing stuff. Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer. Precision Fly and Tackle is a family-owned business with a passion for the outdoors and a sense of adventure. They are anglers who enjoy every moment spent on the water with family and friends. Precision Fly and Tackle carries the widest selection of Euro rods, reels, lines, leaders, flies, and accessories. From the beginner to the advanced angler, Precision Fly and Tackle can outfit every angler, no matter the budget. Visit them online at precisionflyandtackle.com. Then use code TROUTBITTEN10, that's the number 10, for 10% off your order. Gear up with Precision Fly and Tackle for your next adventure.
I also think, and to kind of lead us into talking about streamer hook sets, I think what the trout is doing, and we mentioned this earlier, but what the trout is doing when it eats a particular type of prey really does impact how we need to set the hook, you know?
Cool point.
And I think obviously a trout that's eating a bait fish is making an aggressive play on that bait fish rather than intercepting it floating in the current, right? And so when we nymph fish, the directionality of the hook set is designed to counteract the direction the fish is facing, which is upstream, right? So we're setting the hook downstream, fish is facing upstream. It's a passive take typically. Sometimes they'll move and intercept it, right? But it's not like the type of aggressiveness we'll see with a streamer eat at times. A streamer eat, it's an ambush prey, right? The brown trout are ambushing that prey and they need to do it quickly, right? Yeah, we hope so. And as they eat, they're also turning quickly back to cover wherever they came from. That's where they want to get back to as quick as they can. And so oftentimes with streamers, and you know, whether it's coming tight kind of to the line or strip setting, we're counteracting the fact that the fish is probably moving directly away from us, right? And so an aggressive hook set of the type that we might employ in some other scenarios might really be counterproductive when it comes to a streamer. But yeah, curious what you guys think.
Streamer stuff is totally different for me. They're chasing something, hopefully. They know what they're eating. I often will show people a nymph and then I'll hold a streamer in my hand. It's like 20 times the size. Yeah, right. Even a small streamer.
Right.
And so it's so much more for them to reject. The way I like to fish streamers, I'm asking them to make a decision. And if they've eaten it, they're often eating it and turning and going the other way. And then I'm trying to hook up. What do the rest of you guys think about streamer sets?
Bill's going to offer more than me. I know that. The only thing I'm good at with the, the streamer
Grove
set.
Grove doesn't fish the streamers.
Well, but I end up, the visual aspect of it, right? When I'm in a boat, that screws me up all the time. And so I try to set the hook after you've been nymphing and dry fly fishing a bunch. And then I start to throw streamers and you see this big predatory fish come out of nowhere, to swipe your fly and immediately strip it out of their mouth. Right. Yeah. Right. That's kind of that's all the advice I got. Be patient.
Yeah. Sometimes. Patience is a big thing. Deli.
I don't.
You're a good streamer fisherman.
As soon as I see them eat it, I try to set as quickly as I can. There's no hesitation.
You don't pull it out of its mouth.
I guess the hardest part is if that fish is following and trying to determine when he actually eats it.
Yeah, because you don't always see them actually eat it.
Yeah, or there's times when where you may not visually see your streamer and you're like, did I hit the bottom, or did something just suck it in? And so for the most part, I would say I probably strip set, let's say 60% of the time, and 40% of the time I set with the rod tip or trout set.
That's a good point.
If it's directly above me, I'll set the hook as if I was nymphing because the fish is above me. Once it gets even with me at any point or below me, I consistently strip set. And so the whole, strip set because it'll stay in the water and the fish will come back.
Yeah.
I've had it happen maybe once or twice on a really big fish that I strip set and it circled around and ate it.
Sure.
But for the most part, once they eat it in our area, for the most part, once they hit it and they feel that it's not real, they're gone.
Yeah.
Let's say 85% of the time. There might be the 15% of the time when the fish are just so on streamers that you can Like, it's really rare.
Well,
where you can throw back until they'll come back and eat it, and you can set on them the next time.
Well, you're bringing up, I think, probably what most people are thinking right now. If you're streamer fishing, you got a strip set. The idea of the strip set is to keep the fly in the water. One of the most, I got my pet peeves, right? One of my pet peeves is when people say trout set. Oh, you don't want a trout set on that. There's no trout set. There's no trout set hook set. I get it. Like, there's industry standards. There's expectations and what people are saying what a trout set is. What people mean by a trout set is a dry fly set, which we covered 20 minutes ago. A dry fly set is like, hey, I got all this slack to pick up. Now I got to set pretty far. And then I come to tension, and then I set the hook because I've come to tension. That's what people mean by a trout set. And so if you're ever in the saltwater and somebody's yelling at you, one of the guides is yelling at you and saying, don't trout set. What they mean is don't dry fly set. If you're a good tight line nymph fisherman, if you're a good streamer fisherman who's in touch with their flies quite often in both of those scenarios, then you're not going to be trout setting anyway. You're not going to be trying to move the fly any more than a few inches. Along the same lines as what you're talking about, Bill. For me, all I'm trying to do is tighten up. I'm just trying to tighten up my rod to the fly. And if I'm strip setting, okay. The idea is to only move the fly like one strip, which is what? A maximum of like 2 feet, maybe 3 feet. That's pretty far for a strip set. But I can also move the fly only 1 foot, 10 inches. We said we're pretty good at moving the fly only 10 inches, probably less, with a check set, right? Bam. We're in touch. We're tracking the fly, and a fish eats, and then bam. And we're only moving the fly 6 inches to 10 inches. Well, we can do the same thing with a streamer. And even if we're stripping and jerk stripping, we can do the same thing with a streamer. It doesn't mean we're pulling the fly all the way out of the water. And so there are two things with a strip set. People will tell you strip set so you don't take the fly away from the fish. So he gets a second chance to eat it. Like you said, Bill, they hardly ever come back and swoop on it, like twice, but occasionally, right? Once a year, you get that fish that's like, I'll take two chances at it. But the other idea with the strip set is that we don't have the rod, bending and like taking away some of our power then. If the rod bends too much, then we don't have as much power. Now, again, you're talking about a really bony mouth fish. If you have that, that's fair. That's a good reason to strip set always. That's fair.
With that, a little bit of this comes down to what rod you're using.
Sure.
When I occasionally use a 3-weight, I will not trout set with streamers. If I'm fishing, let's say double 6s or double 4s on a streamer, I don't feel like it has enough force because those 3-weights have a little bit softer tips, and so fair. I've had a couple bigger fish. That's my excuse, right? The hooks didn't penetrate it as well, and the fish got off. Fish probably didn't eat it well enough. So with that, if I fish a 3-weight, I'll often strip set no matter what.
I like that, Bill. Good point. Hey, Trevor.
Yo.
We're going to talk about wet flies here.
Yeah.
And these other guys, they don't even fish wet flies. Why? Because they're
night
fishing during the day, right? Night fishing.
I caught 2 fish on wet flies this weekend.
Deli got them on
look
wets.
at you.
All right. So cool.
Did they hook themselves?
I take it. Right.
Pretty much, yeah.
Someone take it back, and Deli can contribute too. Matt, you just shut up.
I'll just shut up.
Because you never fish wets.
No.
Wet flies are the other form. You got dries, nymphs, streamers, and then wet flies. Not necessarily in that order. Don't want to exclude anyone. When we set the hook with a wet fly, what are we doing differently?
I truly think that most of the fish that I've caught on wet flies were hooked inadvertently, or they hooked themselves. So I they come up, they see the fly in front of them as it's swinging. They come up, grab it, turn and run, and they hook themselves. Or it's swung out and it's sort of suspended in the current, and they kind of come up right behind it and sort of envelop it. And at that point, I'm kind of either I'm beginning to pull my line tight to cast, or I kind of notice my line straightening out there's something about that feel and that look. And at nighttime, a lot of times I can see my glow in the dark section straighten. And sometimes it is because it's caught on something, but more often than not, when it straightens out in that particular way, it's because there's a trout there, and it's the matter of me kind of pulling the slack out and kind of raising the rod tip, and the fish is on, and then it turns and runs.
Is that a viable hook set method?
It's a good question. I think because of the uncertainty sometimes that you have, because sometimes it surprises me that there's a fish there. You would think that you don't always get a good hook set. But honestly, I would say very few fish I lose in that way. There's different type, like when we're night fishing, the more mouse emerger style or some other stuff like that. There's some different hook setting that goes into that. But wet flies in particular, I honestly feel like I lose very few of those fish because they really violently turn into that hook and hook themselves typically. So
maybe not wet flies, right? But I fish that approach very similar to evening spinnerfall hatches, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that same tactic and technique that you're describing there is used when you can't see.
Yes.
You're literally chucking your spinner out and applying some sort of pressure or whatnot to get that almost default hook set from the fish.
Yeah. Yep.
Basically, they almost set themselves, let's say.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I will kind of reinforce that.
Yeah.
Right? You're kind of saying that, Trevor. And it's like, okay,
for sure.
I got them on and now, bam, let me get a little deeper, right? Let's reinforce it. That's a wet fly set for me.
Dom, when you're saying the BAMs, all I can think of is Chris Berman on Sunday Night Countdown with whoop, whoop, as he jukes and jives.
Right. Whoop. Chris Berman. Is he still around? ESPN, right?
He is. Yeah. Bam.
Bam.
Bam. There he goes.
Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl, everybody.
Stairway to 7, baby. Stairway to 7.
Stairway to 7. Don't doubt it. Which quarterback is leading us, Matt? Just real quick.
One for the doubters.
Oh, he's got the middle finger up. One for the doubters.
I think Fields is going to end up.
Oh, you think Justin Fields is going to lead us to
the reports?
Stairway to 7.
It looked like he was playing better than Wilson the last couple of days.
Okay. Well, we'll see if they actually give him a chance, but whatever.
Let's go. Here we go.
All right. Hey, a couple quick questions. Can you set too fast? Quick answers.
Yes.
Yep. Do it all the time.
For sure.
How do you not set too fast?
I like what you said about trying to match the trout, I think that's a good rule of thumb, as good as you can get as far as kind of trying to keep that in mind. And I think it also helps a lot to pre-think, like you mentioned this earlier, pre-think your set, whether it's the water type, the way that the trout are feeding, what you're fishing with, and then even the directionality of it. Think through all those things before you set, and before you even make your first cast, because all of those things need to be taken into account when you hook the first fish.
Right on. And you're knowing how much slack you have.
Yeah.
So you know how fast you need to set. What about hook set direction? Where are you setting?
Downstream.
Downstream. That's good. Yeah. Between 10 and 2 and downstream.
Yeah. There you go.
Depending on the back cast.
Yeah. Anything else, guys? Deli's got something.
I can
see him. Yeah.
When I'm in small streams that have a lot of structure and a lot of things around me that I can't necessarily make a back cast, even with dry flies or nymphs, I'll even strip set.
Right on. Good point.
There's no one size fits all rule for everything here.
Right.
If you don't have any ability to back cast, then strip set, whether it's a dry fly, whether it's a nymph.
Yeah, everything has its own moment, right? And the cool thing is, by fishing all these different styles, we develop all these different ways to hook set, and our timing changes, and we're adapting to the fish. Basically, what do they want me to do? That's what I'm going to do. Like you say, Deli, if you're under the trees and you lift up, you're in the trees, you're not going to catch the fish. So yeah, we'll often strip set. I've double stripped sometimes. If I'm on a dry fly, I'm like, 5-6 feet of stripping just to set the hook on that 1 8-inch native brook trout that takes my fly. And we're back to the brookies.
Boom.
Native trout or get the out.
There you go. All right. There it is. Hook sets. They're not all the same. There is no trout set because we fish a bunch of different ways for a trout. Set fast, but not far. Usually. Read the situation. Read the trout. Stick it to them and have fun out there. Hey, next week, episode 9 of season 11 on the Troutbitten podcast is the airing of Grievances 3. We've been waiting 12 months for this one, and it might be 4 hours long. This time, too, we're including guest grievances. So send those in, and we'll read some of them on the podcast. No questions next week, just stuff that bugs you about the fly fishing scene. Get it off your chest. It's good for your mental health. So, Mr. Matt Grobe, will you read us out?
Sure can. Remember, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Troutbitten website hosts over 1,000 articles with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and tags too. Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel, now featuring the Troutbitten Tip Series, the Fish and Film Series, and the Troutbitten Fly Box, all in collaboration with Wilds Media. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a comment because that really helps. Until next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the water. I got a feeling
Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl. Here we go. That's right. Hook sets.
Yeah.
I'm terrible.
If I went in, I'd go sideways and get into trouble.
Stop stalking over wild trout, please.
Doc stole my answer.
Just read the words.
It's a spark for sure, but
We cut the line and ran home.
here we go.